Hi, everyone. This is Gary Wilson, and welcome to this week's version of Real Estate Investing for Professional Men and Women. We got a great guest today, Jared Addis. I'll introduce him in a second. But before we get into it, I want to just remind you, if you've been watching or listening to this for a bit and you haven't signed up yet or subscribed to the podcast, please feel free to do so. It's on now probably 75 different channels. Of course, the main ones being iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, things like that. But more importantly, remember, we've got this awesome community of real estate investors from around the U.S. and Canada, and almost all of us are professionals in our industries, and a lot of us have businesses. Engineers who have a consulting business, or orthodontists with their own orthodontic practice. The thing is, the way we invest, it's different than the late night guru stuff. And we're not here promoting you don't have to have cash, you don't have to have credit, which you can do, but that's a hard way to make money in real estate. We're really into buying the right kind of properties the right way. We do it honorably, ethically in our neighborhoods. Everybody wins. The neighborhood wins. We win. The tenants win. So that's really who this is for. And by the way, you can go to myinvestmentservices.com and click on members here, and you can see how you can be a member of the group. Several thousand strong. I personally train over 20,000 investors and agents to work with. So here's the big deal for all of us investors. We actually have agents we've trained, over 3,000 of them over the U.S. and Canada, to help you and I do a good job investing. They're certified. They're not into the no money down stuff. They're helping us unearth properties going under the radar screen. We find the right owners, the right properties that you and I can reach out to and acquire more of our own assets. Okay. So in any case, welcome aboard. I'm glad you guys are doing this. I want to introduce Jared Addis. He's a fellow mastermind member of me from a group called Go Abundance. Jared, welcome aboard, man. I appreciate you taking your valuable time to do this,
Gary, I appreciate it. It's good to be on.
Yeah. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, for those who are not familiar with who you are, if you could just start off with who you are and a little bit of background and give us some context to work from, and to help people really personalize this, because we get into some examples and strategies and stuff like that. That would really help drive it home when they feel like they actually know you a little bit,
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess the quick background on me is I really think it started for me when I made the decision to not go to college right away and join the military. And it was kind of one of those defining moments for me. I didn't really come from a military family. I appreciated it. It was respected, but it wasn't a part of our culture as a family for sure. And so not going to college right away and choosing to do something different was a decision of itself. And then I had this wild hair that I not only wanted to join the military, but I wanted to be this super cool special operations reconnaissance guy. And again, I mean, it was just up to this point, it was like, well, who is this guy? What's he done? Nothing really outstanding. Played sports, but I just saw an image, and I said, I'm gonna go for this. This is really gonna change my life. And I gravitated towards that. And it's probably one of the first times where, everybody in your life should have something that they see before it happens, and then they figure out how to make it work. And that was probably my first big moment where, a year and a half later, through a really, really difficult road, through sand getting kicked in your face and cold water and all, the whole 9 yards of making it through special operations. I was there. I was at graduation. I was getting my pin, and you could say that a lot of confidence and just gratitude came out of that moment. And so from there, I went to Iraq, Afghanistan, did my deployments, and was ready to hang up the gun and pick up the books again and go back and go to school. So went to school down in Miami, Florida at the University of Miami, did really well. And as I was graduating, kicking around all the different things that one should do when they were graduating, weighing the job offers, and this really interesting job came across my plate and put me into sales. And so that was my entrance into a sales career, which I'm super thankful that was the direction for me. I started my sales journey, started making great money, multiple six-figure job, and just really said, okay, well, now what am I going to do? And that's where I was a busy job. I was traveling all the time, great company, but I knew I had to figure out ways to put my money to work and not just spend it, because it doesn't matter how much you make, you can definitely find ways to spend it quick. And that's where I discovered investing in real estate. And like a lot of people, it was that 2-bedroom townhome for me was my first deal. We were living in Las Vegas. I was covering that territory, and that was our first deal. And I had to beg a guy for a loan. The deal was so small, he didn't even want to deal with it. I had to kind of make a deal with him that was basically like, you got to give me a chance, because I'm not stopping here. Like this, if you help me out here and make this work, I'll listen to you, and you give me advice on what else I need to be buying, and I'm going to find a way to scrape every penny I can together, and I'm going to keep buying these properties. And he believed me. And so I did, and I ended up buying about 9 homes from that same, title company and real estate agent situation. So 10 years go by, and things are going really well. I'm investing in real estate. Deals are becoming a little more difficult to find, and the cap rates are compressing. And so I'm looking for opportunities to pivot. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at apartments, and the same things a lot of your audience is probably exploring, and great asset classes. But we discovered assisted living. My wife is a physical therapist, and she was working in a large assisted living facility at the time. We were kind of having a conversation on where else we should be putting our investment dollars.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, we're at a real estate conference, and we meet a guy who's doing residential assisted living, and he probably wanted me to get rid of me because I was just asking him so many questions. But yeah. I said, well, here's a house, you're buying a house, maybe you're doing a conversion, maybe it's already licensed. But, at this time I had bought 20 homes at least, I'm sure. And so that didn't really scare me. And I was talking to my wife about what's it like to work in the operational side of things. And she really had a heart for it. And that's where I it was a little more interesting to me than just an investment, seeing how passionate she was about the elder community. And I said, we really need to really explore this. Mm-hmm. We learned everything we could. And about a year later, we bought our first residential assisted living property. And now fast forward, we've had that property for 2.5 years, and we just bought our second at the beginning part of this year. So we're growing.
Nice. Wow. Well, I tell you what, if you wouldn't mind touching a little bit on the what part. So you got into assisted living, and there's different kinds. There's medical assisted living, non-medical assisted living. Geography has a lot to do with it, demographics, social graphics. So if you have an example, if you don't mind sharing, if you don't think your wife would mind sharing, maybe an example of one of your first one, maybe the first one, and walk through the process a little bit, because I know it's a little bit of a shift from going from traditional residential, multi-unit apartments, things like that, into something like this, because there's different rules, regulations. Some parts are more complex than others, but maybe paint a picture there with if you're of examples. And a lot of the folks listening to this are actually related to the industry indirectly. They're dentists, they're chiropractors, they're MDs. And I think this is going to get a lot of attention here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you mentioned a key word in there that I've helped people get started, and I've tried to answer questions for people along the way, like people did for me. And one of the biggest things is, I'm not a doctor, or I don't know medical, and I can assure you that nobody knew less about the medical industry. Mm-hmm. Other than, I had my wife, I've relied on her a lot, but the biggest differentiation that I can say for people up front is assisted living is non-medical. So when you get into the medical differentiations and skilled nursing, it's just a completely different ballgame. And assisted living is really that step above independent living, where if you break it down, your job is just to provide assistance with the very basic needs for humans as they age. Now, the medical providers and doctors and home health companies, hospice, all of those things will actually come to you, and they'll come to the resident in your facility, in your home. It's a great benefit, works really well, but a good thing for everybody to know up front is that it's the medical part is not your part. That you outsource. We don't pay for that. It's an insurance benefit to the family members themselves. So it's important to designate that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Where was your first one? Was it in Vegas or was it? Because I think you said your first 2-bedroom. Was that Vegas?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So we moved to Austin, Texas about 4 years ago, and so we took all of our real estate dollars with us and have been putting them to work in Texas, including the assisted living facilities are in the greater Austin area.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Now the first one, what was that like trying to find it? Like, how did you search? Did you just look for a regular residential property, like a 4-bedroom rancher, for example, that was an area that you could get it zoned for something? Like, what was that process like when it comes to zoning, occupancy, all that kind of stuff? Even just searching for the property, like what process did you use to find the property?
Yeah, great question. So the biggest thing about residential assisted living is, anybody in the business really wants it to be an alternative to a big facility.
Mm-hmm.
The downside of that is you drive by and you don't know it's an assisted living facility. So it's both the best thing and one of our most challenging things from a marketing perspective. Or if you're just out driving neighborhoods trying to find your next assisted living facility, well, good luck.
Yeah.
So there are, you mentioned regulations as well. There are every state will have their regulating body where you can go on and you can literally identify every home that's licensed in that state, every home and every facility. So for Texas, it's HHSC, Human Health and Services Council. And so if you go on and that'll give you the property address, you name it. A lot of times the phone numbers. So that's a way. Looking at your local business brokers, sometimes real estate brokers. There's a lot of real estate agents that are getting into, they're understanding people are buying and selling these as a home, but also a licensed facility. So a lot of times in a market, there'll be 1, 2, or maybe 3 agents who specialize in that. That would be a way to find them. And then if you're going out looking for a home that isn't already licensed, the big qualifier there is just, can we do it? And so local zoning, city ordinances, county, double check with those. HOAs are going to give you a hard time, probably. We've had some that go really smooth. The HOA understands what you're doing. You want to have a nice, beautiful, well taken care of home. Nobody's driving. All of the misconceptions get tossed away with education about what you're actually doing and what it's actually going to look like, and how it's going to really benefit the neighborhood and the community. But you do want to check those things just to make sure, especially on your first one. I've been through back and forth with cities in one of our developments and for one of our properties that we're building, and that's okay because that's my third one, and I'm prepared for the fight, and I knew it was going to be a little bit of a back and forth battle. I'm all right with that. The market's worth it, and I have an exit plan if it doesn't go through. But your first one, I wouldn't suggest that. I would just make sure that it's all checkbox.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Simpler is usually better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Complexity is the enemy of execution, right?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about this segment of the market is I've seen a few. Ironically, I used to live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for a while, and not in our immediate neighborhood or our cul-de-sac, but up at the top of the street, down to the left, the next corner, was an assisted living home. And I looked into it because I was in real estate. I was an investor. I find out, well, how does this guy do this? It's a residential neighborhood that looks like a business, et cetera, et cetera. Turns out he was an MD. He was a doctor. And what he was doing was simply renting out the individual rooms to people that they were, it was assisted living, but people that were there were generally not there for years and years. It was maybe 6 months or a year. And the house just looked like a regular house, but I could see with the ramps, everything there was something more going on there. And that's when I first piqued my interest. And I realized there was the more typical example of assisted living was people who were retirement, maybe slightly post-retirement, but they don't want to be in a big facility. They don't want to be cutting grass and fixing stuff anymore. And yet they're perfectly independent, mobile. They just want to be able to come and go, but they want to have a home situation they can live in where there's other people, where they're happy at cooking meals and have a living room and a dining room and a yard, and they can plant flowers and have a garden. That to me seemed like, boy, that's kind of where I want to go, because I'm looking at the USA's demographics and social graphics, and baby boomers are now hitting that in that market. There's 76 million of them. That's a lot of people. So tell me, if you don't mind, describe maybe your what we call the avatar as far as the resident in your assisted living places. What does that look like to you? Who does that person look like to you?
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, it's actually the daughter usually is the person that we direct our focus towards, because they're the ones making the decision at that stage, and they're definitely taking mom or dad's needs, desires into account. But it's really what we politely call daughter Judy is kind of like our avatar. And she's, when they walk into a residential environment after touring 2 or 3 big facilities, these big facilities are beautiful, and they got a lot of great things going on, nice grand piano and a swimming pool that nobody uses and all that other stuff. But when they walk in, they feel like they're home. They feel like their parents' home. They're getting older. Even if they're independent and mobile and they can walk, you mentioned it's all about being close, being safe, having the garden out back, those little things versus, going down to the workout room and hitting the weights at 89 years old. I mean, it's a realistic part at that point. So we're really appealing to that daughter Judy, and we're really striking the chord about family environment, assistance that's close by. I mean, the biggest visual difference is when you go into a big place and you walk in, you probably get greeted by somebody, and then you turn left or right, and there's a big long hallway full of, there's just nothing in the hallway, and you can't tell the difference between any of the rooms. And it looks like an institution. It looks like a hospital. It feels like an institution. And that is not what we want as we get older. We want that social network. We want people close by.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we really highlight as we're touring and marketing to that our ideal customer, which is daughter Judy.
Yeah. Well, I like that. And the thing is my age, I've both my parents, they remarried, so I had parents and step-parents. We lost my stepfather earlier this year, and he was in a facility for a while, organized big hallways, hundreds of people, and I can never remember, as soon as he went in, and I went to visit him, I drove all the way down from Canada, and he's like, without saying it explicitly, he told me, he's like, I don't want to be here. So we came back down at Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, got one of my brothers, was 5 of us, and we did what we call a jailbreak. And we just went and got him and said, we're taking him out of here. And it was the happiest day of his life. He had Thanksgiving with us. A month later, we're at Christmas, had the best Christmas ever. We're sitting around, the hospice brought in the bed with the reclining mechanical or electronic bed.
Right.
And he had a nurse come by every day. But essentially, he was home with us. And that night of Christmas Eve, we were sitting around singing Christmas carols. I mean, he was eating like a horse. I've never seen him eat like that in months. I mean, he had dwindled down to nothing. But what I'm getting is he'd passed on 2 weeks later, but I'm so glad that we did that. And the key thing was he didn't want to be in the big facility. He wanted to be, and he even told me, he said, if I can be in somebody's home, I just want to be in somebody's home, with the dog running around barking and stuff like that. And so I think what you're doing is, absolutely necessary. And I think it's a huge market. To me, this is my personal opinion. I'm in the business, obviously, but assisted living right now is sort of where Airbnb was maybe 10 years ago. And I got a real strong feeling about this market. And it's because we are coming from contribution, providing something that people want and need. And, and who knows, they might be around 30 more years. We don't know. But the point is it's what people want. Always give people what they want and what they need. And it promises you, like Zig Ziglar said, helping enough other people get what they want, you'll get plenty of what you want. So for all you folks out there listening to this in the medical field, or even if you're not medical at all, like Jared and I, we were not, tap into your big why. Maybe you got parents like I do, that are now in their 80s. And my stepmom's just 70. She's the baby of the bunch. But I just visited my dad in Washington, D.C., and I can tell you, it's weighs heavily on his mind. He's got a great home right now. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, but he knows at a certain point he's going to have be in another situation. I'm hoping this is a situation for him. But in any case, if you could, I appreciate you sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about the where, like proximity. So there's micro proximity, macro proximity. Micro is where you are in Austin. Macro is the broad U.S. and Canada. So you've got some places in Austin. If you could take this in two parts. Part is, in Austin, what type of neighborhoods do you look for? And then with what you're doing, do you know other people doing this in, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Portland, Oregon, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, other people you better doing this. So there's something like a pattern we can apply to no matter where we are in the U.S. or Canada. So micro and macro, if you don't mind, I know it's a loaded question, but we've got people from all over the Bahamas, even Europe, and I think 26 different countries listening to this webinar. So, yeah.
Well, there's a lot in there, Gary, and so we may unpack this one in a couple of rounds. But okay. The one thing you mentioned previously that I want to make sure to touch on is just the global demographic shift with the baby boomers and aging. And there's it's the largest industry event in assisted living. It happens in Chicago. It's the NIC, and it's usually all of the really big players. You guys probably know about the Brookdales of the world and those big assisted living names, companies that own things from California to Florida. The talk this year was, how do we make our facilities and our developments and our communities later look and feel residential, both in terms of the feel and the appeal, but also the safety, the proximity to caregivers, the reduced fall risk. I mean, as people begin to see that this is an option, it's more preferred, it's better for the resident. A lot of these big names are starting to really say, we got to get on top of this. So talk about being at the forefront of Airbnb. Here's what's going to happen. And I don't know if it's 3 years, 5 years, or 15 years. I could guess probably 10 to 15. But just like Airbnb, residential assisted living is going to continue to just grow at the entrepreneurial and the small business owner and the somewhat larger business owner level. And the more beds that you can do during that time, and to put that system on the same, to make them all kind of look similar, then when those larger players come in, they're going to want every residential bed they can buy. And they're going to want to scoop them up at, just like they do with apartments when they do the portfolio consolidations. I mean, that's when the cap rates just get crazy and the exit plans get amazing. And at that point, whether you have one or you have 10 or you have 20 across the state or nation, that's going to be a good day for you. So I wanted to point that out with your kind of overall demographic shift. Austin, the nation, what you're looking for, and the patterns are really, again, a series of check boxes, especially on your first one, to make sure that you can do it. And then kind of what I call some common sense. So your state's going to tell you how many residents you can have inside your facility.
Okay.
Texas is 16. It's one of the larger ones. Some states, very few states, but I think there are about 3 of them that don't have a rule on how many you can have. That's pretty rare. A common number is like 10 or 12. Arizona is 10. That's a popular market. Florida, I believe, is 10, or maybe sometimes there's a rule that you need a sprinkler after a certain number. Trust me, go get the sprinkler and get the number that you want, because it's totally worth it. And it's a safety thing. Just do it. In the grand old scheme of thing, you'll make your money back in 3 months probably. So it's well worth it. And then the common sense things are, if you can get a single family house on one floor, it's probably a good idea. Not a lot of stairs in our business, or and the elevators is doable, but it's a detractant. So the largest home that you can get as a shell, garage conversions are really big in this business. So if you've got a 2,500 square foot house with a nice big 2 or 3 car garage, you can easily convert that to 10, 12 bedroom assisted living facility. Without having to do any external work. So you're going to get speed, and then you're going to get cost savings when you do that. Additions are just like additions for any other real estate project. You're dealing with how big can I go on the lot, what's allowed, and how much room do I want to take up, and then what's my blueprint going to look like. But you're really looking for that. There's no magic, just you got to have your entrance right in the center, and all this it's really, if it looks like a house and you can do minimal amount of external work, that's really ideal for kind of your first one to get your occupancy number up there around that 10 to 12 mark is just a great figure, and it still feels very much like a home with that figure.
Okay, that's awesome advice. And it's funny, the numbers, the magnitude of potential profits with this is sometimes it's staggering. When I meet other people, a year and a half ago, to winter of 2018, I was one of the speakers for the RIA annual RIA conference. It's a cruise. And one of the guys I met, he created a whole program for assisted living, and I started meeting other people. I think, these numbers are stacked. So when a lot of people say, well, it's too competitive now in the residential rental market, the prices are high, the rents aren't high enough. I'm like, you should be looking at assisted living. If you think Airbnb is getting flooded too, which it's not, go to assisted living. Everybody's like, well, what's that? No, it's like, whenever something looks good and it's working, you see people doing it, it's working well. And yet most of society says, what's that? That's usually a pretty good time to get in.
Exactly.
So in fact, if you have any insight on timing, like, and here we are, we're at the peak of a market. We believe we're at the peak of a market. It could keep going, who knows? 10 years ago, we're at the bottom of the market. I think you said you started about 4 years ago. As far as timing goes, do you see any effect at all with market timing on this industry? I think I know the answer, but to me, it's like almost a foolproof industry, So, yeah.
It's a long-term play for sure. And, I think anybody should have that in their mind. That would be my only, we talk about the good, and we talk about the things that, hey, be prepared for this as well. It's a long-term play for sure, but in a good way. And so people should be, it's not a house flip. You're not gonna go in and flip a residential assisted living facility. That's probably not gonna work. I'm not saying you can't, but that's not the strategy. So it was funny because I bought several homes in Texas from this one real estate agent that I'd been working with. and I found a residential assisted living home that I wanted to convert.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I want it. And she said, okay, what do you want to offer? Because normally I'm going to negotiate, right? I'm buying a house as cheap as I can. And I said, list price, and I need them out as soon as possible because I want to start work. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, look, I'm not trying to $5,000 or $10,000 slow this deal down. It's more important to me to get this thing bought and renovated so that I can get it operating. And so it's a different mindset in terms of that. Your play is going to be a little bit different in that regards. And then people need to account for two things. They need to account for the real estate, and the real estate in and of itself is an opportunity. We're going to continue to see, I've had several people come and offer me just to buy my real estate, and then I could lease back the operation from them at an affordable rate for me as an operator, if that's what I wanted to do, and get my cash back out. And then a real estate investor could be sitting on the real estate making a great payment to them, so everybody wins. We're going to continue to see that develop a lot in this space as well. But you're acquiring two things. You're acquiring the real estate and you're acquiring the business, and that's the biggest thing that I would like people to know. The money in assisted living is absolutely there, is because just take a 10-bedroom and look at the average rent that the state affords, and you can do the math. But you are buying the real estate and the business, and so that's both the challenge and the opportunity with it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That's awesome advice. And I know we're getting closer on time. I want to ask you another question if I could. Like when it comes to once you have the property up, it's remodeled, it's expanded, you've got it basically ready for production. What would you say is one of your favorite ways to find the residents that are going to live there? I mean, do you have a favorite technique or that you don't mind sharing this with people? How do you actually find the people that are going to rent the rooms from you?
Super good question, and super important. I mean, nothing's more important than marketing probably for any business. And that's where even if you have a wholesaling business, you've got to find your next customer. So what I find is, and what I advise and what worked really well for us, is to pick a target date. And the renovation is awesome because people are naturally in the area going to wonder what the heck you're doing. So use that momentum in your favor to generate your story about what you're doing and get that out through, the easy stuff. You don't have to overcomplicate it, but the Chamber of Commerce, Facebook, all of your neighbors, some flyers, get the word of mouth going, and just tell people what you're doing and that you're going to be open on this date and that you're planning a big party. And so your goal should be, when I'm finished, I'm going to throw a big party and I want to have as many people there as possible. So you're going to put a lot of energy into that effort. And once you do that and you open and you have a big party and you get the word of mouth going, you're going to get so much contact information, so much exposure from that one day, that basically all you have to do from that point on is just maintain the cruise control of being known out in the market. So if you put your energy into that celebration day, which will be fun anyway, that's when you can put it on cruise control afterwards and just keep the community knowing about you.
Well, that's real. I love that strategy, throwing a big party. But by the way, what's interesting is, demographically speaking, I've over the years heard a lot of people say, well, our parents, people in their 80s, are not on Facebook. Well, I can tell you, my 82-year-old mother and my 83-year-old Uncle Bill, we're getting together as a huge family reunion here next week down at the Outer Banks. And they're both on Facebook almost every day. And what's interesting is the younger, the millennials, they're not on Facebook like we are. They think Facebook's for old people. But the thing is, it's a great medium to communicate things and get the word out. And so I appreciate you sharing that strategy. And I just love the whole thing about having a party, because think about it. People love connectivity. We want to connect with each other. And it's a great way to do it. You're in a neighborhood doing this, and people are seeing that, and they've got parents. I mean, awesome strategy, man. Yeah. So we're getting real closer, but I want to wrap up with one more question, if you don't mind. I call it the big why question. And I appreciate you sharing your background. It gives me some context to where you're coming from. But like, where are you going to? You know, a lot of people say, well, Gary, I just want to make more money. And I get that. I've been through that phase when I built the empire. But now I'm more into trading my money for time and experience. I want to be with my family. I want to be with my parents in the Outer Banks and pay for a week. And I want to have the experiences. So is there something that's driving you? Maybe in your own family, you've got a circumstance you're thinking, boy, if I could solve that problem, you know, I'd be a happy camper. And all of a sudden, it's that you got something you can tap into for the rest of that community, 76 million strong. You know, but if you don't mind, a little bit about the why part, and then we'll kind of wrap this up with maybe some last minute advice or something, you know.
Yeah, the big thing for me, and really for me and my wife, is we always wanted to have a business that we work on together. And we were tossing, you know, would it be a physical therapy clinic because she's a physical therapist? Would it be, what would it be? And we just knew we wanted to have a little business baby, we call it, right? Where this is what we do together and we enjoy it. And we had the conversation for probably close to 10 years. And when this presented itself, it really made so much sense because it married a lot of our strengths together. And our why really kind of gets redefined every day when we just understand what we're doing and how we're helping people. I had a guy that actually helped me with the website. And we became friends, and he was dealing with his mother and Alzheimer's situation. She eventually ended up passing away, and he sent me a message the other day because we got an inquiry through our website, which he sees, and he said, man, this is just so cool that you get to help these people who were in my situation before, you know, on a daily basis, go through something that's really difficult for them, but you guys are now set up and trained to help them through their situation and alleviate the worry and alleviate the problems and just make it better for both people, the mom and the child. And so our why kind of constantly gets redefined. And I think you'd mentioned time. Time is the one thing. We only get 24 hours in a day. And we're definitely, you know, we're in our mid 30s. And so we're definitely in that hustle, grind. And we're enjoying that. But we see that as the market continues to go up, we're going to be in a really great position to either sell one day and have, you know, as much time as we want, or we'll have created such a large business at that point that we'll be able to have key people. I mean, we already have key people that are making those day-to-day decisions, but really sort of manage from 50,000 feet above. And so either way, we'll be in a really good point. So it's nice to know that that's what we're working towards, just taking one step every day.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, and actually that was a great way to wrap this up, man. It's, you know, 20 years ago, I was in your shoes building the empire, and you know, we had great success, and I'm so grateful for every experience I've ever had, since they weren't all great. I mean, you know, just like anything in life. I mean, you have your plan. It's like Mike Tyson said, man, you can walk into the ring with the best plan, but when somebody hits you in the nose, that plan's out the window. You know?
Exactly.
So if you look at I still use this today. It's my Franklin Daily Planner, you know, and everything's in pencil. So you have to plan. You got to have goals. You got to plan. But the fact is you got to have some flexibility there, because you always get where you want to go as long as you're persistent and consistent. But the way you get there might not be exactly the way you think. And so now in my 50s, by the way, I'm probably going to be your next customer. You know, I mean,
Come on, we got a room ready for you, man.
There you go, man. That's the generation I'm in, and we're having fun. And I look at my parents, my dad. My gosh, he's still traveling. He's just came back from Europe, and you know, he's 83 years old. And we went out looking at museums, you know, at Smithsonian, stuff like that, with my wife and daughter. At the end of the day, we're like, our tongues are hanging out, and this dude's climbing stairs like he's still in boot camp in the Army, you know?
That's fantastic.
So I think we got some great genes, but my message to everybody is, man, there's so many ways, guys, you can profit in this business, but it really comes down to coming from contribution. Like Zig Ziglar, I call it prosperity through service, right? Serve first and you shall prosper as a result. So provide something that people want and need. And man, I promise you, the world will reward you handsomely for it. So I think what you're doing, Jared, you and your wife is awesome. And she's a physical therapist. I mean, she's probably a naturally, compassionate, empathetic person. And so I can see you guys doing this, and I can't wait to catch up with you at another one of our events. But and again, so I want to say thanks, Jared. Thanks everybody for participating and listening. Again, if you haven't subscribed yet, just go on iHeart Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, any one of the different channels. Subscribe to the podcast. You can see we're a little bit different than a lot of the other ones. We are about real estate investing, but it's where we come from that makes a difference, and where we're going to that allows us to change the world. So go to myinvestmentservices.com, click on members area, join the group. Man, we're 1,000 strong and growing every single day. This is now in 26 different countries. And we'd love to have you on board. Come to one of our events. Go to the events page. My gosh, we got a big event coming up in Boston. And then the next one won't be till another half year later, probably in Florida. But join the community. I mean, hang around. Remember the old saying, you're the average of the 5 people around you. So hang around 5,000 other people who are accomplishing the same things. But Jared, any last words of wisdom? I just, again, want to say thank you for taking your precious time to do this. And anyway, if you have something to share, your own website, a report, a book, anything, people to reach out to you, if you can help people and want to do that, how can people get more information or reach out to you if you're willing to do that,
Yeah, most definitely. I'll do all 3. You can follow me at Addis. That's my Instagram handle, and post some interesting things we're doing there. So at Addis. Favorite book we've been doing, I actually recommended this in our book club. It's a quick read, but The Obstacle is the Way. For all of you out there who are you're working a full-time job, busy, trying to do your investments, The Obstacle is the Way is a great quick read. You can probably do it in a couple of plane rides and give you some insight there. And Gary, you mentioned it, but just putting one foot in front of the other, having a plan and knowing that the plan's written in pencil, and knowing that it's all about the 10-year target, and day to day it's going to go a little bit great and a little bit crazy, but just keep doing it. I know a lot of your audience did what I was doing, and they work a really busy job, and they use their 5 minutes of spare time to try to create wealth and build their empire in real estate. And that is absolutely the right thing that they should be doing. And my advice would just be, keep doing it. It all works out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, brother. I hope you have an awesome rest of the day. God bless you and your family. And this has been one of my favorite ones. I've loved the subject, because it does. You really are serving a lot of people. They want to be served. It's something they want. And it's like the perfect combination, man. So thanks for sharing your time and your knowledge and expertise in this, Jared. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next Go Abundance event. And staying in touch. I'd love to do another one of these later on. Maybe we'll do a joint venture on creating like a training module for this or something, and that'll help you. How about that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Sounds good, Gary. I'm always open. It's great to chat with you, man.
Yeah. Hey, hang on one second, and I will click off the recording here. So